welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. Sitting here on a Thursday, and yeah, I know you set your watch by it. We are going to have some college football playoff national championship best bets, our picks, sides, total, quarters. We're saving the props for Monday. Monday, big old title game prop show at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Plus, got to get into some of the latest portal buzz and other, little bits of personnel notes throughout the day. Danny, you're back. How we feeling? It's I feel like we haven't gotten a chance to check in a while. So DK, what are the vibes like since we got to hear from you on Monday night? Mm-hmm. Are we settled now? People have been calling for the return of DK.
Yeah, it was a little nutty. It's always risky in our business taking a vacation around the playoffs, around New Year's. But when you have a free mansion to stay in, when you get that offer, it's really hard to turn it down. So I jumped on that. It was a blast. Time zones are an issue, but now I'm well rested, well studied. Watched some of the playoffs on
don't call the name out.
Some of the game film from them from both teams. So yeah, I'm ready to go, prepped and ready to go. Good to be back home, and headed out to Houston on Saturday to be on site there in Houston.
That's right. DK will be a part of the CBS Sports HQ coverage, so make sure that you are dialed into that as well. Yeah, you did you're a trooper. Just fighting. What did you have, like 4 hours of sleep on that Monday night?
Yeah, I think 325. The part that I'm bummed about the most is Tom had his viral take about Rome Odunze being the best receiver in the country and he's going to have a better career, and he would draft him ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. And, of course, I'm the one featured next to him, and I'm barely awake. Like, I look I'm hurting. And, of course, it gets, like, all these views, and I'm just sitting there, like, just looking like a zombie. But, thankfully, Tom's take was strong enough where I think it took those eyeballs off me.
Yeah, and you did DK did give us a full view of the mansion on the walk and talk.
Yeah.
Or in the Orange Bowl, as you're like, if you're able to see exactly how expansive it is, it was fantastic. All right. So speaking of some of the things that have happened since that Monday night, Alabama, we've got just a kind of a big exodus right now. Now we've got almost double-digit numbers into the transfer portal. Not all of these portal names are going to stand out to you, except for, unfortunately, the very notable starting center Seth McLaughlin, who those snap issues were a big storyline from the Rose Bowl. Some other players that you might recognize on that list: former 5-star receiver Shaz Preston, freshman quarterback Eli Holstein. We also have J.C. Latham, the stud tackle, is off to the NFL draft. But as we're always trying to do the personnel ins and outs, looking at Alabama's roster, you are going to have some expected turnover here, but of these exits and departures, and as we're looking ahead to what Alabama's got coming in, what stands out as some of the most notable headlines to you?
So I think it is hard to keep quality depth in today's day and age when other places have starting spots for you, and also the NIL that comes, commensurate with a starting spot. Like, is Seth McLaughlin good? No, he's not horrendous at blocking. Now, the snapping throughout the year was a problem. Terrence Ferguson is a guy who I think will go to another Power 5 program as an offensive lineman and start. I will say on 24/7, Shaz Preston was definitely not a 5-star. So just do want to point that out. Like, he's a decent receiver, but just kind of another, all right, like the third or fourth best guy that Bama signs in their receiver class on an annual basis. Some will hit, some won't, some will wash out.
We've seen that with Alabama's wide receivers basically since the star run. Since Jalen Waddle, we've had a lot of guys come in, Ja'Cory Brooks, Trayshawn Holden, and they might flash when they transfer somewhere else, but it's not like we've seen that kind of dominance since about 2020, 2021.
They may have him this year coming in.
Okay.
With Perry Thompson, and if Ryan Williams sticks, he hasn't signed yet. He's just committed. Those guys are pretty nice. Eli Holstein, I saw on Twitter there was like some Pitt interest. I'm just not somebody who ever thought that he could play at Alabama like at all, and I never understood why they would take him, but they did, and he's gone after a year. So not surprising to me there. Maybe he can work at Pitt. Yeah, I just didn't see it with him. Who else on this list really matters? Like, I don't know. None of these guys are losing, I think, are impact guys.
That's good. See, that's good to point out, because when the headline is like, whoa, this big tidal wave of players leaving right now, what does that mean for Alabama? Like Tom, does your antenna stick up? Because, we got to have that conversation, right?
By the way, I need to, excuse me. I was thinking Ryan Williams, Auburn, just because like they're trying to flip him. Perry Thompson is actually going to Auburn. I don't want that to get clipped. And yeah, okay. Apologies.
Oh, Perry Thompson flip watch. Bud Elliott reporting here on the Cover 3 podcast, everybody.
Because we just shot a video about Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman is the truth. Yeah.
I think clearly, Chip, there is a culture problem at Alabama, and Nick Saban has lost control of the locker room. Is he retiring? I think these signs all point to yes.
Well, I don't know. Like,
he might.
We did ask, do we think he wins another title? Like, I don't.
I don't either. I think it's going to be so much harder to win a title now for Alabama.
Is it though?
Yeah, because I mean,
but access has always been the thing. Like for me, it's been why the SEC has had such advantage. They've gotten 2 teams in the playoff, for a lot of the years. So you get that. They're going to get a majority of the teams in the 12 team. And if you're Bama, you're almost going to punch a ticket at the beginning of the season based on perception. I mean, they're going to go 10-2 and that's in, and potentially 9-3.
But see, that's the thing. I look around at the SEC. I think other programs are moving up. And I also think that Alabama, like,
they don't have to beat them, though.
No, but are they ever going to get the first round bye? Like, Alabama, more often than not, at this point, with the way Georgia's rolling, is probably going to have to win 3 games to win a national title once it gets to the playoff. And we've seen, like, they haven't won a playoff game in how many years now? It's like we talk about they haven't won a national title in 3 years. They haven't won a playoff game in a few years. So it's like, I don't know if I have enough trust in them right now to win 3 games and win another national title. I think they're going to be getting to the playoff pretty regularly, but I don't know if they're ever going to be my favorite to win it once they get there.
Isn't it 4 if you're first round, quarterfinal, semifinal title?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, 4.
Yeah. So like, is Alabama, the odds that are changing right now, you're going to have to win twice as many games if you make the playoff to go and win a national championship. I mean, I think they could, but I don't think that it's as surefire as it has been before. I mean, this was supposed to be on paper one of the most talented Alabama teams, and the performance did not line up at all.
I think it all depends. And what's crazy is that, I say this, they had Bryce Young and Will Anderson and did not win a title with those 2. But I think it is kind of quarterback dependent. Like if they get another, game changer at quarterback, who I don't think Jalen Milroe is right now. He has to make a drastic jump in being a quarterback, going through progressions, not just deep balls and, running, but he's got to be that mid-range quarterback. If he develops, I think he can, but I still think that's the piece they're missing.
Is Julian saying the answer? I mean, that's their stud quarterback coming in. Maybe not for 2024, but is that somebody who can lead Alabama to a national championship?
I think he could. Yeah, that's he does seem different than the guys they've signed since Bryce Young.
And it could be somebody else that we don't even know about in the portal.
Well, it wasn't Tyler Buckner.
This year is not,
clearly was not, but I think they're always in that mix.
Well, I mean, who hasn't jumped in who would kind of scratch that itch? Like who can they
Will Howard.
I don't want to say tamper.
No, I think this year they're not. They almost, because of the way Jalen Milroe played, they're not in the market this year. I'm saying next year. Post.
I think they would be in the market if the right guy. Like I don't think all of that staff believes in Milroe. I think some do. I mean, they clearly didn't believe in him after the spring, right? They went and took Tyler Buckner, who's a lacrosse player.
Believe in him after Texas, or when they benched him.
And that was the funniest thing to me about the whole Bill O'Brien snafu at the press conferences before the games about Bill O'Brien didn't think he could play quarterback. I'm like, dude, your current coaching staff benched you for Ty Buckner and didn't believe in you all offseason.
Also, do you think Nick Saban disagreed with Bill O'Brien? Like, do you think Bill O'Brien's allowed to say that if Nick Saban doesn't agree with him? Because I don't. I just think Jalen Milroe can't call out Nick Saban because he's his current head coach.
Milroe was taking reps at receiver at last year's Cotton Bowl.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think Alabama's going to win a national title with Jalen Milroe at quarterback.
Okay,
I agree.
That's a fair way to put it. All right, other NFL draft exits of note. I would not say that this is a headliner, but you also saw Will Shipley. It's off to the NFL draft. I feel like that's a loss for Clemson. I'm not good at the NFL draft, projections in terms of what he's going to be, but certainly something to keep an eye on as Clemson, looks to try to have a bounce back moving forward. Either decisions to come back or, decisions to go. Anything stand out from sort of the last couple days of buzz here? And for those who are keeping track, our deadline, I believe, is 2 weeks away or about a week and a half away. It's the Tuesday, not next week, but then the Tuesday after that is our early entrance deadline. So any names or any decisions that have stood out?
First of all, I can't wait to see who the first person to compare Will Shipley to Christian McCaffrey is, because that's going to happen.
I'm guilty.
Oh yeah,
I already done it this morning on the radio.
Oh,
but here was the way it was described. Poor man's Christian McCaffrey, because he's not as dynamic.
Poor man's
he's not going to be an MVP, but I do think there are similarities to the style of play. And
they are both
color.
Runners and pass catchers. They're both effective at that. Yep.
But he's a good receiver. Like there are some similarities, but he doesn't have the top end. Damn, guilty as charged. The draft discussion, the two quarterbacks, one with a 5-second video, which doesn't have a lot of enthusiasm, with Cam Ward, the other with Will Howard saying now is this more about leverage, you think, or is this actuality? Because Cam Ward does not have an agent yet, correct? So there is still some speculation that this could be one more leverage play.
Like, could Miami drop an enormous bag on him to make him come back, like to make him actually
right, just in case, which could absolutely backfire on him. And then he could be sitting there watching the second round go by and, see if somebody takes him as a project. And then Will Howard, who I was surprised when he said it, but he is bigger. He fits the model as far as size and athleticism, kind of the new NFL where you have to be mobile. He is a pretty good runner. I thought that was a little more curious. And like the teams that are in the market for these potentially two, because it's really these two are the only ones left that really give you a lot of excitement in the immediate future. Like, does Ohio State get desperate? Does, and potentially drop that bag at their feet? I think those two are kind of still interesting.
I think if you're Ohio State, you're trying to play this carefully so that Brown doesn't jump in the portal. Because if you played in one of the New Year's 6 games, don't you get an extra 4 days to jump in?
I don't know.
Yes, you do have an extended portal window. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm Ohio State, I'm going to wait to announce Will Howard as long as I can.
Or whoever it might be.
Sure. What?
Or whoever it might be.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to wait to announce him until Brown can't hit the portal.
Interesting.
And have them both go through spring.
Yeah, because for those, again, just to explain the mechanics of it, the deadline is to enter. It's not like when you enter, there's a deadline to make a commitment. Your deadline to make a commitment is enrolling in order to be an active member of the roster for the fall. I mean, am I wrong? You could potentially spend, I guess your academic eligibility could be an issue, but you don't have to by January 15th have committed to your next school if you want to choose to do so in the summer. But getting into the portal in this window is something that you need to do here in the next little bit.
And somehow we've seen before guys get away. They somehow get up to speed academically, even though they've missed the deadlines. It's amazing how that works out. It does. Oh man. Did you see what they asked DJU about going to Tallahassee? Like, hey, when are you supposed to be on campus? When does class start? And he was like, I have no idea. He's like, I haven't gotten that far yet. It is such, I think even the coaches now are like, what are we doing?
With these old, listen, I'm not trying to defend
Kirby Smart too.
With the grad transfers too, because we're just trying to get you into whatever grad program is going to like get you on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably online classes, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, you're not hanging
the school stuff. It's always been kind of a sham. Although I did like take pride in being a student athlete. My parents kind of made me take pride in it. But I mean, it is something that, I just think it's going to fall by the wayside. It already is even more of a joke than it's ever been. I just wonder if it becomes optional, at some point.
I mean, with all the education your father had, he was not about to let his son just skate, right?
When Kirby was talking about like we got to change the calendar and we got to fix all this stuff after the Orange Bowl, I thought he was like real close to dropping. Like, why do we have to do this school stuff anymore? So,
Cardell Jones going to be right all along.
Yeah,
Come
exactly.
here to play school.
A lot of guys are right. Bill O'Brien, Cardell Jones, just
they get roasted, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, wait a second. Anyway. Any other NFL draft before we hit a break, and then on the other side, get into some of the latest portal action? Any other NFL draft notes that have come out from the recent waves of announcements or non-announcements?
I thought Tyleik Williams was a nice keep for Ohio State. So kind of seeing like our other Buckeyes going to come back, that'll be interesting because we did this discussion yesterday. We didn't get Danny's take. I think if McCarthy goes, Ohio State's your favorite for the Big Ten next year. Like if he goes pro.
Yeah, who would you take in the Big Ten next year?
Even without knowing what either school has? So that's your point, that they have a better roster?
Correct. I think, coming back.
I thought they had a better roster this year.
Yeah. It's hard to take that title from a team that's done it 3 years in a row. The game back in Columbus, right?
Yeah.
That's probably what would swing my vote too, just about being where it is.
And while we have like Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, like stud receivers that are going to be the next ones up, I still think Ohio State's probably better because of its defense. And Tyleik's a big part of that. Like it's going to be a nasty, nasty Buckeyes defense again, just like it was this year.
And I think Michigan's defense will be really good again too. Quarterback to me is a question there if McCarthy's gone.
Yeah.
Yes, I too think Ohio State is the favorite. Everybody should make the odds that Ohio State is the favorite. I definitely will not try to take advantage of that.
You're trying to manipulate the market. I
would never.
A friend of ours during it. Never mind. Never mind. I'm not going to get anybody in trouble right here. All right. Coming up. Oh, yeah.
We need to get DJ, or we need to get Denny's thoughts on DJU, Florida State.
Yes.
Woo! Yeah. That's not what you wanted, Mike. No, so I think clearly the way I was coming into this, Cam Ward was the guy that I would have been targeting. They were too. But, for whatever reason, maybe it was price, dragging your feet. It was taking too long. They decided to move on. I thought DJ Uiagalelei was the safe pick all along. I think there's a very safe floor with DJU. But what I'm interested to see is Mike Norvell, who did develop Jordan Travis into the quarterback he is. Like, took him from a guy that was on the cusp of maybe switching positions to receiver to a Heisman Trophy candidate and a player who, really orchestrated, that last season of an undefeated run for the majority of it. I'm curious to see what Mike Norvell can do with DJU because no one's been able to elevate him from, Jag. Is that fair? Jag plus.
I would say Jag plus.
Yeah, Jag plus.
I think he's plus, but yeah.
Yeah, so no one's been able to elevate DJU from Jag plus to elite college quarterback, which was his expectations coming out of high school and been his expectation every year he's played. I'm curious to see if Mike Norvell can do that. But I think it's also going to come with what does that roster look around him because they're losing so much production, and that's going to be a part of the challenge as well. But I do think he'll create a system that will fit his skill set more so than the types of things they were running with Jordan Travis. So I'm excited for it. But I think it's the safe pick. I don't think it's the pick that says Florida State is back in the ACC undefeated title run. I think it's okay, at least we know that bottom drops out. Probably 9-3 is the worst case scenario. But let's see if we can get him to elevate versus the top tier competition.
There is nobody in the world more relieved right now than producer Jordan. Because I was waiting for you and Bud. And Bud yesterday had the same reaction. I was waiting for you and Bud to hype up DJU and be all excited about it. And I was going to make Jordan go through all the old episodes and put together a video clip of YouTube bashing DJU.
Well, hold on.
You guys had to come with reasonable opinions about it.
To be fair, although you can save the clip of me celebrating, that can be the one just put out that. Even going back to Clemson, it was always, is the problem DJU or is it the coordinator? Like that was very much a nuanced discussion. But then I do think like it started off so well at Oregon State. I mean, he had a pretty good first 5-6 games, and then it finished almost identical to what he did the year previous at Clemson. So again, can he take him to that next level? That'll be a challenge.
I'll also say at Oregon State, he played behind a better offensive line than the one he ever played behind in Clemson.
Danny, I was like, this is what I think you take him to avoid the bottom dropping out like a 6-6, 7-5.
Right.
If he stays healthy, I have a hard time seeing them be worse than 8-4 for the most part.
And if it doesn't work out, you hope that Brock Glenn is up to speed,
Yeah. I mean, there's also the chance Brock Glenn just takes a big jump. Like they do like him quite a bit.
Yeah. And like Tate's gone, right? Like that, our quarterback depth chart is.
He's apparently visiting South Carolina.
Interesting.
So
it's like DJU, Brock Glenn.
I think Lenora Sellers is going to be the starter of South Carolina, right?
I've not checked in on the South Carolina quarterback room.
I would assume that would be Tate to be a backup, like veteran backup type thing.
All right. Coming up on the other side, we got a little bit of breaking portal-related news. So it's great that we haven't even gotten into the segment yet. We'll go beam up into the transfer portal next.
Sunday on the NFL season finale, playoff fates will be decided. Who's in, who's out. We can't wait for the answers. The NFL is on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Going to remind you once again, because the voting is open through January 28th. But we here at the Cover 3 podcast are a finalist for the Best American Football Podcast category in the Sports Podcast Awards. Now, is this our first time being a finalist? No, we've been here before, but this time we're trying to bring home the trophy. So help us bring home the hardware and be the winners in the Best American Football Podcast category. And you can scan that QR code on the screen. Now, if you're listening to this, we'll include the link in the episode description. If you're watching this, we also have a link. The whole process of voting only takes about 30 seconds. It's so easy. We appreciate those of you who have voted. You've tweeted at us. You've showed us that you are offering your support. You all got us here. Seriously, y'all's support of the Cover 3 podcast has allowed us to be a finalist once again. But we need your votes to be able to bring it home. So again, QR code on the screen. You've got the link in the live chat and the link in the description of the YouTube video and the podcast on the audio side. We appreciate your continued support of the Cover 3 podcast. Now, we have a great team here at the Cover 3 podcast, including our animations, which have really leveled up this year. So let's go ahead and let's jump on into that portal.
Outstanding work.
Right? I think the silhouette of DJU was one of those first ones too. Right. So very timely. Breaking news here from 24/7 Sports, Matt Zenitz. Ole Miss star running back Quinshon Judkins has informed the Rebel staff he plans to enter the transfer portal. That is incredibly interesting for the fact that Ole Miss has been a program and a team that we've seen really load up on some of the top portal talent, specifically off the top of my head on the defensive side of the football. We've looked at Ole Miss's schedule draw in the 2024 season and assumed that this is Lane Kiffin and that program going chips in, trying to make a run here. But then you lose a player like Judkins. Tom, is this how do you change your evaluation here of Judkins and of Ole Miss as we look at one of the SEC's top running backs over the last 2 seasons, potentially leaving the Rebels program?
He's a good player. I don't know how much it changes my opinion of Ole Miss next year. Like, it's one of those things where clearly, this is my read. You bring in all these guys in the portal. You're spreading some cash around to do so. And players on your current roster are saying, well, how much of that can I get? They go looking for it, and they're not going to get it. And now they're going to go get it somewhere else. I think that's probably what's happening here. I don't know if I'm Ole Miss. I'm looking to invest a ton of money into the running back position, especially in that offense, because as good as I think Judkins is, I think you can find a replacement. In fact, I think they probably already have that replacement on the roster. What will be interesting to see is what kind of market Judkins commands. God, I can't believe I'm talking this way about college football players, but it will be interesting to see what kind of market there is for him, because he's a talented player. There are going to be teams who feel that they need to upgrade at running back. And is there a team out there who maybe is a playoff contender, a conference title contender, who thinks that they're a running back away and therefore will have value at the position to pay what he's probably looking to get? Because I think in a vacuum, this is really no different than the NFL, where I don't know how much money college programs, I think running backs matter more in college than they do in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't think that the market value is going to be like, like if a quarterback, if we can go off of what Matt Rule's saying, if quarterbacks getting 1.5 to 2 million, I don't think running backs are getting $1 million. I don't think they're, I think you're.
I think like a really good running back is probably getting like 3 to 350.
Yeah. Like if you can get 500 grand as a running back, I feel like you've done very, very, very well.
That's an elite number for a running back. Now, here's the thing. There's no long-term deals in college football, right? So that's one of the reasons they don't get paid in the NFL, because the NFL, chews them up, spits them out. I wouldn't pay a running back in the NFL. I probably wouldn't pay crazy money for a running back in college, but it is just a one-year deal. So if you're confident that Judkins is going to run hard and play hard for you in all the games you need to play, maybe you pay him. I think with Ole Miss, though, and a couple of these schools that really attack the portal early, I think we hear the sounds of some brakes screeching a little bit. And that is the 2-time transfer rule. Ole Miss already had a lot of transfers on their roster. And a lot of these teams were operating under the assumption that those players didn't have any leverage because they couldn't go anywhere. So if you jumped out and you spent a boatload of money before the 2-time transfer rule came down, so you're kind of pot committed to all those kids you just bought. And then you got guys on your roster who are like, hey, what about me? Because now I got leverage again. I can go somewhere else, right? My negotiation just changed. Like, I know there were schools who thought Dart was going to hop in. So Ole Miss might have just had to put out a Dart fire. And like at some point, maybe they don't have enough, like there's probably other guys on their roster who transferred in, who Ole Miss likes, who aren't going pro yet, who they've had to re-up, and somebody, like, not everybody can get paid.
Gosh.
I don't think Dart's going anywhere, by the way. Like that was like 2 weeks before the Cotton Bowl, whatever that was.
Yeah.
I'm still with Tom. Like, I can't believe we're talking about players this way. And it does bring to the attention that they have more leverage than NFL players, because there's no security in most of these deals with, you're going to lock a guy in, he could leave at any time. I think this, and again, to echo what Tom said, we've seen our sport, college football, become more and more like the NFL, and that includes the business aspect of it too. So as it pertains to Quinshon Judkins, I think there's a very clear number you're willing to pay for a running back. And if you lose some of that production and maybe it's a sliver less of the upside, you're like, okay, fine, we can replace that position. But did you seem to say that running backs mean more in college than the NFL?
I think so. Yeah.
Slightly more.
Yeah.
But I still don't think it's a game changer where you're like, we cannot lose this guy at any cost.
I think with a great running back in college, you could compete for a conference title if that's the focus of your offense. I don't think you can win a national title with a running back is the focus of your offense in the college level.
Quinshon Judkins is a great running back at the college level.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's system. I think that he is I think he's a really, really special running back.
But if you go look at the first year of Kiffin, what was that, 3 years ago, when they had two running back system, their numbers were pretty significant. Like, they still were up there among the leading rushing teams in the SEC. So I do think, as much as sometimes we think of Lane Kiffin being a finesse, passing guy, he's still pretty physical along the run game.
I think more about Kiffin in terms of scheme. I think we've seen him adapt to, the personnel that he has. And I don't pencil him in necessarily as finesse, but for Judkins, he walked into a running back room that had Zach Evans, former blue chip prospect, Ulysses Bentley IV, who had been really, really good at SMU. And he was a true freshman. And he ended up being the workhorse. Like, he ended up being the alpha in that room. And I think that was, talking to some people who did know him from high school, I think he's a special player. And to your point, Bud, if Ole Miss is making a financial decision that we're just not going to pay because we still think that, having edge rushers, being able to bolster that defense, being able to hang on to Jackson Dart, that's going to get us in a better position to make the college football playoff. I'm not going to argue with that. But I do think that if you are a team with the resources available to get into a bidding war for one of the top running backs in college football, I think the addition of Judkins can be something that can level you up in, like if you were the 5th best team in the conference, the addition of Judkins, if you've got enough other pieces around, could make you like the 4th or 3rd best team in a conference.
Yeah.
Where would he fit?
I mean, look at the impact Cody Schrader had on Mizzou.
Yeah. That was the workhorse.
Coming from D2.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly it.
Right.
They didn't go to the portal and pay a couple million for him. They just said, hey, look at this kid from Truman State. Let's try him out.
And again, like, if you're confident that he's cool with you running him, 200 times, right? Like, he missed some games this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm signing him to a big deal, I want to know why. Because I'm serious.
I know.
Like, is he a guy who cares? Because, you could sign a running back to a big deal. He's what? 1 year away from getting drafted?
Yeah.
He's already going to get drafted based on his tape. What's to stop him from taking the check? And, we've seen guys do this. Those hamstrings injuries, they do linger. So, look, I think he's a stud back. He's already got a lot of mileage on the legs. So,
buyer beware, Bud Elliott.
At that position.
This one stood out to me in terms of a portal announcement because 1 year ago, when former Kent State wide receiver Dante Cephas announces that he's going to Penn State, wow, nice. This will be a thing that unlocks Penn State's offense. It didn't happen. Not like we thought it might. So Julian Fleming, who's played a lot of football at Ohio State, at times has come up with a lot of big catches. You understand why he was a blue chip coming out of high school. With him going to Penn State, I mean, can we play it back? Wow, Julian Fleming, this is the thing that unlocks the Penn State offense. I mean, Tom, does this move the needle for you at all when looking at what Drew Aller's got to throw to in terms of pass catchers in 24?
I haven't dug too far into this yet. I was planning on maybe writing something about it this afternoon, but I think he's a talent upgrade over what they had in that room last year. I don't know if he solves the problems that they have. Like, Julian Fleming, for everything he did at Ohio State, and he was never the top guy. He was always like, the 3rd or 4th guy there because of who they had ahead of him. But he wasn't like a deep threat. Like, he was very much a, like a short slant kind of curl crossing route kind of guy over the middle, which is valuable to have. But from what I have seen of him and what I've looked at with the numbers, he doesn't strike me as the deep ball threat, which is what Penn State seriously lacked this year. But it'll also be interesting to see how he molds into that offense now that they've brought in Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas and what that offense is going to look like. So I think that, yes, this is a good move for Penn State. Yes, this is an upgrade for Penn State. I don't think it solves all their problems, though. Like, I think that there's still a lot of work that they need to do in their passing game and with their receiver core. And maybe, some of the guys they have in there that didn't really get on the field this year and some of the guys coming in, maybe those end up being those guys because Penn State has had them in recent years. But to me, it's not like oh, wow, this will fix everything now.
I don't really know what Kotelnicki's offense looks like with a big armed quarterback in it. Right? Like, I know in the group chat we had discussed Like some of the stuff they've been running is a better fit for Penn State's other QB, right? What's his name? Pagula. Bo.
Pagula. Yep.
But at the same time, like we really haven't seen him with like a top NFL quarterback type prospect, unless you think Jalen Daniels is that. And I think he's good, but not like a cannon necessarily. So I don't really know what it's going to look like. It's an offense that's evolved quite a bit. Like everybody borrows from each other in college football, and they borrowed heavily from Coastal Carolina after they played them in 2020. So like some of those elements started popping up, which is smart because Chadwell's offense kind of scores almost everywhere it goes. So yeah, good idea. But like I think it's an offense that probably has the ability to adapt, and I mean, Fleming probably helps him.
Good blocker for the screen game.
Yeah, he's a very good blocker.
Like we're talking about the Kansas offense, which
not exactly the top priority I'm looking for at a receiver, but he is a very good blocker.
I'm sure Penn State fans would be just thrilled to hear that. Oh, he's a great blocker. That's awesome. No, they need the explosive big play receiver.
Yeah, I think Julian is a good player within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. I have yet to see him prove anything past that yet.
Yeah, I think Andy Koltnicki is the solution, not a receiver.
Fleming. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's going to be, and then hopefully that collectively makes everybody better.
Any other big transfer portal stuff that you've had your eyes on recently?
I do think Texas A&M getting Nick Scouten to visit over Florida State is a big deal for A&M and a big deal for Florida State.
That's the former Purdue
defensive end.
Yeah. Purdue defensive end, very, very good. The shining star on a Purdue defense that was struggling a little bit at times this season. So he is not going to visit Florida State?
The thought is that might be a one-visit recruitment, and Florida State lost on getting the visit to Texas A&M. So we talked yesterday, like Mike Norvell is going to have to take a look, see if this defensive staff is good enough at recruiting to get to where Florida State fans expect him to take the program, which is one that competes for national titles, not just SEC titles. I'm very skeptical of that, as I've been for like 3 years. So we'll see. I do think playing Georgia in the Orange Bowl, by the way, probably helps Norvell some. Like seeing the quality of player you need to sign out of high school, not the portal. They're not doing that.
So. Yeah, no, agree. And if this signing class was supposed to be the one, and there are good pieces, but on some of the
big pieces, not good big people pieces. Yeah.
If they kept losing on some of the big chips down the stretch in that cycle, Florida State just kept falling and not being able to finish the deal. So.
For the third year in a row.
Yeah, I think they get outworked too. So it's a good place to work.
Damn.
I think Miami staff works harder.
Yeah, I was going to say there's another ACC staff in the state of Florida who the word on the street is like, man, you get really, really overworked and run into the ground. And guess what? They land big dogs and they have higher recruiting rankings.
Yeah, they don't use the ACC excuse. Yeah.
Very interesting. All right. Time to turn our attention to the last game of the season. So coming up on the other side, we go into all the different ways, sides, totals, any quarter, half, team total bets that we've got for Michigan and Washington in the college football playoff national championship. Next.
On the next NFL Monday QB, with multiple win and end games on the line, our crew recaps who's in and who's out of Super Wildcard Weekend. Go under center on the only NFL show all about quarterbacks. Tomorrow on CBS Sports Network.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, a reminder, we'll do some of our best bets and our predictions for the game here. We're going to have a player prop extravaganza on Monday's show, Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, day of the game. Should have a full board really to be able to operate with as we get a little bit closer to kickoff. But first, let's take this sort of line item by line item, hear everyone's thoughts here. Danny, we've got Michigan -5. What are you going to do with the side here?
Lamb. I think this is Michigan's year. That's the challenge everybody's looking for is Washington's offensive line versus Michigan's, defensive front seven.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're both elite, but I do think they're going to be able to get to Michael Penix. Any good quarterback, no matter how good they are, I think you're thrown off your game by pressure. And I think they're able to do that. I think there'll be some big plays for Washington, but I think they'll be able to prevent like the big plays. I think they can kind of maybe even play that bend, don't break, like don't get down, to the end zone, or let them get down to the red zone, get red zone stops, force field goals. Those are wins. And I don't think we're talking enough about the other side of the lines of scrimmage. I think Michigan's going to be able to run the football against Washington's defense, play keep away. I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Blake Corum, and I think they're just able to lean on Washington. I think if Michigan doesn't have those, screw ups throughout the game, I think they beat Bama by 2 touchdowns, possibly 3. And that game's not even close. I just think they're the better football team, so I'm going to lay them with Michigan.
Agree.
Hey,
I mean,
and let's go historical trends here. 2019, LSU is a 4.5-point favorite against Clemson. They win 42-25. In 2020, Alabama is a 9.5-point favorite against Ohio State. They win 52-24. 2021, Georgia, 2.5-point favorite against Alabama. They win 33-18. And of course, we remember Georgia as a 13.5-point favorite. They win 65-7. That is 4 straight years of the college football playoff national championship favorites. And not only winning the game and covering the spread, but covering the spread by at least 12 points. I am not sure about covering by at least 12 points. But there might be something to be said about the team that is better after pouring everything out and getting rid of, and this stood out to me a lot talking to Washington's players after the win. They weren't blaming the long layoff. They were acknowledging that they were not crisp, and I think that Michigan probably might say some of the same thing with some of the mistakes that they were making. So you've gotten all that out of the system. You've gotten this short 1-week turnaround. So you're back into a game week mentality where you don't have to go and sit on your hands even for an extra 3 days. You're coming right back in your regular season mode in terms of your calendar. That's what I would point to in terms of this recent trend, that semifinals, you work it all out of the system. By the time you show up to the championship game, the better team on paper has won. That better team on paper is Michigan. I'm going to lay the points with Michigan as well.
I just think I'm not confident in either side, especially when it comes to the spread. I'm not that confident in the winner, although I do think Michigan will win more often than not. But when I look at the matchup, the things I keep coming to that make me lean towards Michigan are that we can talk about Penix, Adunze, McMillan, Polk, and they're great. We can talk about how Michigan hasn't faced that offense in an offense like that this year. They haven't, but they faced it before. They faced it the last few years against Ohio State. And they beat Ohio State up. And that's what I think they are going to try to do to Washington. And I think Michigan's secondary this year is better than the secondary it's had the last couple of years. So I think that is a factor that they're not going to completely shut them out, because you can't, but they are going to slow them down. And I do think they have the defensive personnel to kind of, like you were saying, Danny, make them play the bend but don't break. Where I think Washington is truly screwed here is that, as far as matchup is concerned, is Michigan does not have an explosive run game. Like, the Blake Corum injury completely kind of sapped that from them this year. They are a down by down, don't lose yards, stay on schedule, power rushing offense. It's what they've done all year. They don't need to hit the home run. They're just trying to get 3-4 yards, lean on you, wear you down, bleed the clock, and break you in the second half. Washington's defense against the run ranks 130th nationally in success rate against the run. That means Washington's defense is routinely giving up 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, letting you stay on schedule when you run against them. Michigan will be more than happy to take advantage of that. And I think that the way their offensive line performed in the Rose Bowl gives me a lot more confidence going into this matchup than what I had going into the Rose Bowl in them, because I thought they played very well. And I just think Michigan is going to come into this game the same way it did most of the season and try to shorten the game, figuring the best way to keep Washington from scoring is to keep them on the sidelines and just control the ball, control the clock, and sit on them. And I think that more often than not, they will be able to do it. But if J.J. McCarthy makes a mistake like he nearly did on the very first possession against the Rose Bowl, if you fall behind Washington, I don't know if Michigan can climb its way out. So to me, that's going to be pivotal if I'm the Huskies. I need to get an early lead because I need to be able to kind of start the avalanche on them. And if they don't, Michigan's going to make it really hard for them to come back too.
Yeah, I don't show like a real bettable edge on this. I think we have a fairly good feel for what the ceilings of these teams are. I would expect both of them to play, about at their ceiling. I mean, if you make Michigan like a, I don't know what, like a 29.
Well, don't power numbers have Michigan as like a 10?
A 10 is like
no, not a 10, a 10-point favorite. Like the idea is that this spread has been adjusted based on raw power numbers because of how special Michael Penix and the passing offense is. That you can't throw that out there realistically, knowing the explosiveness and like what we're dealing with, especially coming off that game, or at least the market's perception of that. Like I want to say SP Plus had it at 12, like Michigan minus 12 or something like that.
Well, that's why I'm saying that you need to throw that stuff out. And I not throw SP Plus out, but you need to basically take and put teams at their ceiling if they're playing for a national title, because you have to sort of give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to play like they're playing pretty close to what their best is. Right. A season-long power rating is going to be baking in some things.
15-7 against Arizona State.
Correct. Right. Where like Washington won't come out and say it, but Penix mysteriously played like he was hurt for like 5 weeks.
Right.
Like if forced to press and bet the game, I would bet some Michigan, because I do show like on pure numbers, I still show a little bit of a Michigan edge. I'm going to pace it down a little bit. Washington plays very slow. Michigan also plays really slow tempo wise. Like they both take a lot of clock. So it's probably fewer possessions than normal. But it's a real small edge for me. I would rather bet Washington team total under if I think Michigan's going to win the game, because I don't think Michigan's going to score 50. Maybe they will. They certainly could.
That's not the way that
I think Michigan even wants to score 50.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I also kind of just back on, protecting Michael Penix and the matchup that we're going to see there. The Dylan Johnson injury, it's what was it? The X-rays came back negative, so it's not as bad as we thought. I don't know if he's. I mean, I saw him like you guys all did at the end of that game. Did not look like he was feeling great. Granted, we've seen guys come back before, but if he's the shell of himself, not that you would be able to run, but also in pass protection, that's where I think it could hurt him as well, because he's been pretty solid in pass protection, picking up linebacker blitzes and recognizing them, getting the right guy. And there's a pretty, big gap in playing time between Dylan Johnson and the rest of the Husky backs. So I think that's another area where it concerns me, even if he's not, if he's playing, but he's not 100%, I think it's a big loss more than just the production in the running yards. I think it's also in pass protection.
Johnson had 2 touchdowns, but only had 49 yards on 21 carries, 2.3 yards a pop in that game. It wasn't like he was ripping them off the same way that he was against Oregon, against USC. It wasn't the massive performance that, of course, being held by Michael Penix. I want to shout out the Washington fans that rock with us, by the way.
Yeah, it feels bad. Like, and everybody's saying
we were just doing this again.
Right.
Kyle and Gary specifically, they were like, "Yo, Chip, cover 3," in the stands before the game, shouting at me on the sidelines. I go over to talk to them, and they were so nice, and they said they loved it. And he's like, "And y'all pick against us every single game, and you did again. And guess what, Kyle? Guess what, Gary? We're doing it again. I can't believe it." But look, it's not that I would love to be wrong. But if Washington wins, it's because it means we've seen something special. That's what if Washington wins this game, then Michael Penix has put together an all-time playoff performance. These wide receivers go out there and just sort of overwhelm Michigan with their playmaking. Bud mentioned in the big game breakdown, is it possible that those receivers are going to make those contested catches as well as they did against Texas? Is Michael Penix going to be so dialed in? Like, is he just seeing the matrix right now that his ball placement is going to be so perfect for a second game in a row? The odds say no, but if he is, then we've seen something that is like an all-time type performance. And I like seeing greatness. So if Washington wins and I'm wrong, I'm fine, because it means we've seen something awesome.
And I mean, I do think they're going to make contested catches.
Yeah,
they've done like their contested catch rate is nuts all year. Is it going to be like as perfect as it was against Texas? That is probably the question, right? And does it have to be? I don't know. Like, I don't think it's disrespectful to Washington that most of us think that Michigan is likely to win the game. Nobody would like bet your house, I don't think, on Michigan winning the game, right? Like, it's a really fun, good matchup. Penix has played like crazy good. All of the reports that we got in preseason that Jim Harbaugh, I think he actually just said this, that he expects to break the all-time single draft record for draft picks. Well, you know what? He said that in the preseason. Michigan went out and played like they did and steamrolled everybody. We got word early in the year from a coaching buddy of mine. It was like, I think Michigan has the guys that people normally assume Georgia thinks they have. Like, the stuff we hear, we're seeing play out on the field. I think
2-14-0, 2-14-0 teams. You know?
Yeah, and Washington is a great fan base, by the way. Like, I love watching. That's like underrated nastiness. Them and Oregon going back and forth it's great.
And it'll be
there on the West Coast, just not everywhere on the West Coast.
And listen, it'll be great when they're lining up on the Big Ten on CBS in 2024.
Oh, Tony Petitti's just sitting back in the cut, and like, you think he's texting thank you? Like, hey, what do you guys have to do this weekend?
Tony also wants you to mention, Chip, that they'll be on other networks too.
Well, listen, I'm actually don't get in trouble. I think we'll see a lot of Washington. So, it'll be great. We'll get a lot of Washington, and we'll be dialed in for the Will Rogers era. Okay, total 55.5, a shade under a key number of 56. Tom, what do we do with the total?
I like the under. I think because of the way Michigan's going to try to play this game, I think, like I just went over, I think they'll be effectively able to run the ball, and I think they'll be able to bleed clock, and I think that they will do as good of a job as reasonably can be expected of limiting the explosives that Washington so routinely gets. Although, fun fact, do you know Michigan has a higher explosive rate in the passing game than Washington does? Just throwing that out there. It's just they don't throw nearly as often. So it's a volume versus an efficiency thing. But I think it'll be the under. I think Michigan will control the clock most of the time. And I think most people are assuming that if it is under, Washington can't win. I don't buy that at all. We've talked about it. They beat Arizona State 15-7. Washington has won 3 games this year without scoring 25 points. They're capable of winning a rock fight if they have to. It's just not the preferred style of play. So I think even if Washington wins this game, the under can still safely hit.
Oregon State and Washington State, 2 last regular seasons of the game, did it, fairly lower scoring. Both would have been under this total significantly. I'm with you. I mean, if you like Michigan and you think about the way we've broken this game down, I think you have to say under as well. It makes me a little bit nervous later in the game, like that backdoor, late touchdown, kind of slinging it around. If they stop blitzing, if they're playing more prevent, do they scheme something up? But what was the number? Was it Washington team total under?
Yeah, what is it sitting like 20, probably 24.5, 25?
Yeah, I kind of like that one.
Bud, what you do anything with full game total?
If I had to bet it, I would kind of lean under, but I just
Bud's really Mr. Cop Out today's show. I tell you what, if I had to bet it, we're all laying it on the line.
I bet some bowl games and bet more second halves and stuff in bowls, and I just these feel like they're pretty correctly lined. You know?
Yeah.
To me,
I would be loved. I would
as
love
they should be.
Yeah.
Like if your job is setting the line on one game that we have tons of data on.
Yeah,
I
well,
would love
catch
to
me
be
on
wrong
CBS Sports HQ leading up to kickoff. I'm gonna have about 9 bets for you. So last game of the season, baby. We're just setting it hang for.
Nobody's going to remember the ones I got wrong because it'll be 6 months before I give them out again. Just
I would
a
love
change
to
of
be wrong and see
subject
it be
here.
a field goal game. Love it.
Yeah.
Change of subject here, just reading the comments and during the show all day. I love the fact that we have reached the national title game. We have 2 14-0 teams, 2 teams who have repeatedly proven it over and over again all year. And there are still people in the comments like, well, they haven't played anybody yet.
That is
It
great.
kills me. Like, they just beat Alabama. They just beat Texas. They beat Ohio State before that. They beat Oregon twice. They've beaten all these. Well, we still don't know. They haven't played anybody.
I do think like if you went based on resumes, like who has done more versus more, Washington should win the game, right? Like they've played in the best conference from start to finish. They went undefeated in the best conference this year. But I'm just like, if you were going with they haven't played anybody, I think that's more of a legitimate criticism of Michigan, right? Clearly they've played people because of their last, 3 out of the last 4 games.
Yeah,
Well, I would think at this point Michigan has a higher strength of schedule than Washington does.
I would say that if Michigan had not had the game it had against Alabama, and you wanted to pitch me on if this game is close, Washington's proven it with 10 straight wins by 10 points or less, I'd buy it. But that win against Alabama required every bit of late game execution on the field, good play calling on the sidelines, and being able to rise up in the most important moment when that Michigan defensive line is, pushing around Alabama's offense on key plays coming down the stretch in overtime. So, yeah, I'm not going to put as much into that just based on how the Rose Bowl went for the Wolverines.
I just think you can say that Washington or Michigan's beaten 2 top 5 teams, and Washington hasn't beaten 1, although they did beat Oregon twice. So it's like, and when it comes to the strength of schedule thing, again, I'm not so sure that holds weight anymore.
All right. What about any quarter halves? And Bud says a little Washington team total under. First half under. Punch it, feeling each other out.
No, see, that's the thing. I don't think Washington's going to come out trying to feel anybody out. I think Washington's going to come out foot on the gas.
And do they?
I think they have to.
As a great offensive schemer, does he? You get a couple plays early because you've seen something that Michigan has to adapt to. Does that turn into a big play? Makes me a little bit nervous that too for Washington.
So DeBoer is a really good scripter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. If you watched his halftime interview in that game, he was like, yeah, we just kind of wanted to come out and see how they'd play us and stuff. I'm like, yeah. Bro, you guys score on your opening drive like all the time. So you must see how they're playing. And you're like, yeah, here's a touchdown for you. See this. So yeah, I would prefer full game under to first half under.
Washington first quarter.
First quarter, like there's a way to bet first quarter. Correct. Tom just did it. Yeah. it's to have somebody at a ball game with one of these.
Is the coin weighted? Can you tell me what it's going to be?
Washington first quarter plus 1.5. You just need it tied or Washington lead.
Why not?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
0-0, 3-3.
7-7.
Yeah.
Each of them gets a score on the board. I could see 7-7. That was my I had first quarter over in Washington, Texas. It was over 13.5. 7-7 brings it home. All you need is you need each team to get a touchdown. Let's go. Buckle up. Yeah. We'll be getting into more of the specific player props, especially as we've got a little bit more time to gather information on the availability of some of these players, some of the game planning that might be going into it as well. So be sure to come and hang out with us on Monday, day of the game, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Then Monday night, as soon as that thing hits 000, we are going live at youtube.com/cover3. with our national championship game instant reaction. 2 shows, 1 day. Make sure that you're with us. Subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Yes, Danny.
Just final thought.
Yeah.
Just had to get this out there. JJ McCarthy's line, his quote about
underestimated.
No, here you go. We do watch so much film and look for the little tendencies and spend like 10 to 15 minutes on one clip alone, just looking at little details of the posture of linebackers or the DN, little stuff like that, where it's like, okay, you can say it's all sign stealing, but there's a lot more that goes into that play. That is not sign stealing. He is severely misinformed in trying to twist the message. I don't want to bring it up because I'm probably going to set off some Michigan fans, but that is not sign stealing. Studying film and studying plays is not the same as what they were doing.
He also very much underestimated the amount of teams that steal signs at the very beginning of that quote when he said 80% of teams do it. It's not just 80%.
Yeah. And like, of course, he was like, well, we had to change our signs because Ohio State was stealing signs.
One more. I know everybody has to go.
I don't know.
Why hasn't anybody used the comms in bowl season? Have you seen any team use the comms? Because that was legal this bowl season. Teams were allowed.
Some bowls. It wasn't all bowls, right? It was just some bowls.
Games.
Yeah.
I know Maryland did, and Auburn actually turned it down. Like in the Music City Bowl, that was one of the games. Auburn didn't want to do it because the way that they run their offense.
Both teams had to do it, right?
No.
Oh,
no.
So
one team was able.
Both teams had to be okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Auburn was able to say no, and Maryland was able to use the communication.
Yeah, the only headset that the only
I found that funny too, but
the only headset communication that Auburn was using was when they were recruiting on Fortnite with their headset on, trying to make it locked in.
Look, I'm saying, like, if somebody had told Freeze, "Hey, man, you can make calls on this thing."
yeah. Hugh Freeze would have been recruiting during the bowl game, right? Instead of calling.
Freeze like, I only use one phone. Okay.
Yeah, he does.
Not making calls on this headset. Yeah. Okay.
But Alabama huddled. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was.
But like next year, we're going to communication, right? Like that's got to happen. Felt like a done deal. The helmet communication, and it's been kind of quiet. But I think it'll be in next year.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I would love to just be past this.
But think of all the guys that'll be out of jobs. All the guys in the Teletubby costumes. Like, what are they going to do now?
The one guy, who was the team where the one guy was grabbing his crotch as one of the symbols?
Well, there was one that was way more. There was another one that was way more NSFW than grabbing a crotch.
Shaking
it was a quarterback. I think it was a quarterback.
Linebacker looks to the side and he's like, nuts.
Oh, I thought somebody did the crotch shot. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. All right. We will be back Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Come and hang out for our props spectacular and so much more. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Congrats, Jerry. I knew you could do it.